Cocina. One quesadilla and 2 additional kids quesadillas. The other kid could probably be, I don't know, lactose intolerant maybe. Just now realized today's February 10th, 2023. Just want to throw that in there. February 10, 2023. Nobody knows if any of these actors and these YouTubers are being sponsored or they're being funded by anybody, you know. But I do have many projects on the line. And whether I get to do them or I get to talk about them is part of the thing. But what's funny is if you're looking at it, it's like, well, when is the movie coming out? Well, you're actually technically watching a movie. What a movie is, it just means it's moving images and sound. So it's just, you know, light and sound. It's the moving image. And the style of movies have changed so much over the century. You know, it's almost been about a century. It's been 100 years that movies have been around. And there's inventors that are, you know, so if you're watching something, it could be a YouTuber, it could be anything, you're watching a movie. If, you know, if you're watching it on a TV screen or whatever, you know, even if it's still photos and sound, still movement and sound. I don't know, that's all I have to say. But it is interesting, you're watching a movie about a guy that's writing a movie and waiting to make a movie, but yet he's making a movie. It's an interesting little concept. There's UPS. So here's how it'll go. The Messiah will say, "Who is Buddha?" And he will reply, "He is the one we kill on the trail." And what did I say about killing? Thou shalt not kill. It is the written law of God, the Almighty. And who is the king of that? Jesus Christ. Then you may enter. If the answer is wrong, you'll be watching me eat for a long time with all the greats, with Moses and all of them at the feasting table. You don't want to see that. You'd rather be there, right? That's how it'll go. refried beans and tortillas.
Approaching a railroad crossing.
This refried beans and 2 tortillas will be dropped off in about 14 minutes, and then we got to run over to Thai Select. And then we'll drop that one off. And then after that one, it's time for some Taco Bell. Taco Bell, Taco Bell. Go and get some Taco Bell. Taco Bell! Remember, when you go to Thai Select over here off of Hewland, you can swing right by Movie Trading Company, pick up a really good Alfred Hitchcock movie or something, and go back right over there and eat yourself some Thai Select. Thank you. Hello. All right, there's a raccoon under that Lexus, but he's probably well hidden. It was really cute raccoon in the middle of this neighborhood too. It's down that way. Oh well. Anyway, they're funny. They kind of waddle when they walk. They got those tails. It was a raccoon, but he was waddling. Brings me to Short Circuit, the moment where she feeds the raccoon on the patio. That movie is such a cool movie. Now, I'm actually a fan of Heart Beeps when it comes to the robot movies. You know, the cute little robot movies. Heart Beeps has Christopher Guest in it, and a guy named Andy Kaufman, who's a well-known stand-up comedian. Both of them pretty much are. But Short Circuit is entertaining. It's entertaining. It's funny. And it's good, and it kind of gives you a lump in the throat, you know. I think I'm sure Spielberg was behind that one. But Heart Beeps, to me, I'm a fan of that one. It got low ratings on Internet Movie Database, but I'm a fan of it. I always have been, and I think I remember crying when I saw it when I was a kid. Both of them, Short Circuit hits you in the heart too. Those are those powerful 1980 movies. I want to say maybe like mid 1980s. I'm gonna jump and say 1985-ish, you know, around that time, but. They're definitely working on or presenting Short Circuit and Heart Beeps, which is Andy Kaufman. But Short Circuits is good too. They're both similar, and like one's more technologically advanced than the other one. One I think relies more on acting than the other, but they're both really, really good. And there is a raccoon in Short Circuit. Heart Beeps is it kind of reminds me of like a Wizard of Oz tale a little bit. They're lover robots, and they're running out of time, and their heart beeps, and they only have so much time until things run out. It's really, really good, both of them. On my main page on my YouTube, I talk about B-roll. Well, of course, a lot of it's A-roll, but I have a good story about B-roll. So it's in Hearts of Darkness. If you follow Francis Ford Coppola, or Coppola, however you want to say his name, his wife was getting a lot of footage. She eventually made a documentary called Hearts of Darkness, which is like a companion piece with, you know, Apocalypse Now. And he did get B-roll for Apocalypse Now. Probably not a whole lot, but he was getting B-roll. And there was a typhoon that had hit. And he was out there like under a tent or something, under some kind of cover, getting the typhoon, when it would be absurd to set up a Hollywood set in the middle of a typhoon. It would, you know, it'd just be destroyed. And he was continuing filming, he was out there filming it, and they're like underneath, the tent with him going, Coppola, get back in, this is crazy. You don't need that. He was 100% sure the entire film was a failure. It's probably one of the greatest films of all time, but he was 100% sure, that he had failed. But anyway, he went out there in the typhoon, and they were all, that's going to make a movie, a narrative one day, trying to get Coppola back in to safety. Like, we can't do this. And then John Milius has to meet with Coppola to tell him. I don't remember the exact reason he had the meeting with Coppola when they were deep into the film, but he said he compared it to meeting up with Hitler and telling him that there was no more gas for the Panzer, not the Panzer tanks, what they call them, the Panzer tanks or whatever it was, and he didn't want to have to face him because it was let's just put it this way: the amount of seriousness they took on Apocalypse Now, which was important. There was a civil war going on in the Philippines at the time. They originally wanted to go to Vietnam and film in Vietnam, but the studio said absolutely no, because they would have been killed. They were going to try to do that. That's a serious thing right there. It goes to show that the dedication of someone like Francis Ford Coppola is beyond real. It's absurd. It's laughable. It makes stand-up comedy, but he was really that serious. And so he was out there, like the soldier, laying in the mud in the typhoon. Luckily he didn't die, but he survived it. But when he came back for the interview, he was very serious. He had like a 1,000-yard stare.
Approaching a railroad crossing.
Yeah, we know about the railroad crossing. He had like a 1,000-yard stare, and they were interviewing all these camera flashes. He took way too long on making Apocalypse Now. He went over budget. Everything was riding on it. So he presented it in the media very, very simply. He said, "This is not a movie about Vietnam. This is Vietnam," and that's what he said. And that's absurd in a way. Of course it's not Vietnam. It's just a movie. But that's what he said. And it became one of the greatest war films. I personally think Full Metal Jacket's better, but everyone likes Apocalypse. I'm going to have some tacos over here. But everyone loves it, because of its iconic, it's iconic. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not considering that Full Metal Jacket is a better masterpiece than Apocalypse Now. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I think Full Metal Jacket is a better Vietnam movie. But I think Apocalypse Now is a masterpiece in its own world, in its own rights. Remember, he's mixing two different things, okay? In Apocalypse Now, Coppola was taking an old movie, Hearts of Darkness, by Joseph Conrad, and mixing it into a Vietnam story, which is genius. And Cannes loved it. It's a great film. It's a masterpiece. They're both masterpieces. Full Metal Jacket was important because it was written... the guy that wrote it, the title was called Short Timers. I believe he was a Vietnam vet. And he wrote the story in honor of his memory of Vietnam in a way. And it was very much changed. Even the names of the sergeant was changed, the drill sergeant was changed. A lot of things were changed in Short Timers. And I'm not saying that Full Metal Jacket is a better overall movie. The overall movie would, of course, go to Apocalypse Now because it's a masterpiece. That's obvious. So I know I've seen this. I know I've said this 100 times. I'm a fan of Full Metal Jacket because I felt like it was kind of a journal entry of Vietnam, while Apocalypse Now is almost kind of like a dream. So they're both important movies, and it can be argued in many papers, and probably have been compared. Stanley Kubrick comparing to Francis Ford Coppola. Both are masterpieces in its own right. Which one do I enjoy watching more? Apocalypse Now. I enjoy, if I had to choose between the two, I would enjoy watching Apocalypse Now more, but I feel that Full Metal Jacket is probably more of an anti-war film. It's harder to watch for me. It's very difficult. Both of them are genius. And also, another thing about Full Metal Jacket, was actually made in the UK. Apocalypse Now was filmed in the Philippines. But they're both very, very good. I just compare, when I'm comparing the two, I would think of Apocalypse as more like a dream. Apocalypse Now. And it's done in a very artsy, tasteful way, winning awards. Like it won Best Sound, it won Best Cinematography. Full Metal is more journalistic style. Matthew Modine's really good in it. And it basically made a lot of people's careers, both films. Now, of course, also you have to realize this, though. But Apocalypse Now was using the one and only Marlon Brando, leading up to Colonel Kurtz, seeing Marlon Brando, and that was something they had to experiment with. It was very experimental. Full Metal Jacket, of course, it was more... They're both Hollywood classicism, but Full Metal Jacket, I think, was probably... They were lower... not lower end, but they were not as famous actors too. You're using like iconic actors like Marlon Brando, Martin Sheen, for Full Metal Jacket. I'm sorry, for Apocalypse Now. It changes things, Using like Matthew Modine for Full Metal Jacket, it's, he's still a good movie star. He's still a good actor, but it's different. It's two different, one's Hollywood classicism, the other one is a different type of Hollywood classicism. Plus, I'm a big Kubrick fan. If I had to choose, if I only could own one war film, I probably would choose Apocalypse Now, probably, if it was one, because of the experimental quality of Apocalypse Now and because of some of the things that it did. But I've always been a fan when it came to which one is a better Vietnam film. I would say Full Metal Jacket, and then I would probably say Apocalypse Now, and then I would say Platoon. Oliver Stone's Platoon would make like third, even though Oliver Stone was a Vietnam vet himself too. They're all three important war films, by for sure. Apocalypse Now kind of like what it does. For some reason in my life, it kind of comes in like because it's imagery. When you watch a movie, you see something, and then the imagery sets it off, and then you start remembering all the stories around it. Why I suddenly started talking about it, it must have been something. I don't know what it was. It's a haunting movie. All of them are. And then we could sit there and talk all like day long about Platoon. That one's also, man. Now to finalize everything, I know we're talking about Apocalypse Now. I was talking about Full Metal Jacket, and of course I was talking about Platoon, Oliver Stone. But there's one film that I don't talk about, and y'all know what it is. No one ever talks about that film. Stuff that it did to Robert Downey Jr. and Ben Stiller. They don't even talk about it. I've heard some interviews. They won't even talk about the film. Not in interviews. What it did to the actors is they were so method about it and got into character to the point it took them years to forget about such a war film that I don't want to even say its name, Tropic Thunder. I wouldn't even say it, not consciously. If I said it, Tropic Thunder, I would not even say it if I was really thinking about a real war film to avoid to talk about Tropic Thunder, because you don't want to, you want to shield yourself, Tropic Thunder, from anything, that has anything to do with war and just gratuitous violence to a heightened degree, Tropic Thunder. And if I ever were to see Ben Stiller, I'd shield my eyes, Tropic Thunder. I would not even mention it to him. I wouldn't even walk by and say Tropic Thunder to him. Tropic Thunder, I wouldn't even say it. Hang on, I gotta back up here. There goes the sonar.